I do understand, I think, 100% in Bulgarian, but unfortunately I cannot speak fluently Bulgarian until now. Really, it's very important, and thank you very much for the invitation, for my country right now, and I think for you, Europe and all the world, to know the real truth about very painful crisis in our relations with Russian Federation. Basically, as professional soldier, I might tell you that we have just war, announced war, and to our eastern regions, which is led against us. But why it occurred? Why, let's say, Ukraine, without the shooting a single time in Crimea, just gave out our legitimate territory? Why right now so painful we have the blood on our territory? There are several reasons for the situation which occurred. One inspired outside, one unfortunately because of weakness of our current government. This is conflict not between the Russian people, let's say, and Ukrainian people. This is conflict between two civilizations. Few words, what does Ukraine for Russia and what is Russia for Ukraine? This myth about the elder and younger brother, historically not right. This is territory Ukraine of ancient Rus state, which gave Christianity and gave the first statehood to the Moscovitia. In 1612, in Kremlin stationed Polish troops with entity of Ukrainian Cossacks at the part of Rzecz Pospolita in those days. But in 1648, Bogdan Khmelnytsky, when he started war against the Rzecz Pospolita for independence of Orthodox Church Ukraine state from Catholic Rzecz Pospolita state, we by ourselves earned our independence, and this is land of the free farmers and free Cossacks, which after voluntarily joined Moscow state, we protected this Moscow state from main enemy in those days in 17th century in Europe, from Rzecz Pospolita. We weakened Rzecz Pospolita, and we even protected from the south Moscow state from Tatars and Turkey. Majority of the Russian Imperial Army among the Sergeants Corps were Ukrainians, S and Red Army. Second big entity of Officers Corps, this is Ukrainians. By the way, historically, I think it's also important thing. You know who has had the first order of St. Andrew, #1, which were given by Peter Great? This was Hetman Mazepa, Ukrainian Hetman Mazepa. And this land of Ukrainian land until the Catherine Great basically had autonomous ruling. And slavery, feudal slavery, was in territory of Ukraine less than 1 century. After the third dividing of Poland, 1795 until 1861, there was attempt to make totally feudal ruling on this territory, by the way, with the lords from Polish, but it didn't succeed. And this is the grave difference between, first of all, both populations. What was very afraidable for the current government in Moscow? The Orange Revolution 2004 did show for the whole world that Ukraine already has civil society. Civil society which didn't tolerate when in 2004 was attempt to put on the first position the person with 2 criminal charges, and population mostly in Ukraine didn't believe that it was free elections. and millions of people went on streets and defended their opinion. It was the first sign for President Putin, unfortunately, that this is completely different type of governance and civilization, painfully, but European model of democracy are coming to the border with Russian Federation. The second Maidan was completely disaster for the President Putin and his close entourage right now, because he did stake on Mr. Yanukovych. Basically, Russia supported the regime of Yanukovych and tried to establish the same system of authoritarian regime in Ukraine like it is in Russia. But difference is, in Russia, the majority of this authoritarian regime, this is old security officers from the KGB background. There is an authoritarian system of governance with controlling everything: finance, economy, security sector, even organized crime. But in Ukraine, with the regime of Yanukovych, with the help of Kremlin, they try to establish the same model with the criminals ahead. And criminals started to control even with their model of ruling security sector of Ukraine. Vilnius summit was the trigger, and by the way, one of myth that the West inspired this second Maidan in Kiev. It was student Maidan. The first Maidan, which started in Kiev immediately after the Vilnius summit, it was student Maidan, and even in Lviv, the same Maidan didn't permit the representative of Svoboda party, member of parliament, to go on the stage and to have the speech. The students were completely against all flags, even of opposition. They rose on the independent Ukraine. And this was the sign, once again, we have the developed civil society in the country. These protests were brutally destroyed, and the first blood was from the side of government decided to use the same, let's say, strategy against protesters like it possible do in Russia. In Ukraine, it's impossible. The second revolution, revolution of dignity, stopped dictatorship of Yanukovych. But to build democracy, this is not to stop dictators. And it occurred that in my country, we have the civil society, I think, maybe 10, 15 years ahead of our political elites and the power right now. The coalition government, which was immediately established, unfortunately, they used the party quotas for nomination on key positions. And at the same time, our government didn't have any strategy how to defend themselves against the possible Russian invasion. I was more than 10 years the head of intelligence community of my country. I can assure, in all our strategic plan, we didn't see a single day that the Russia might be our enemy. Even our armed forces configuration, this is all Soviet-type configuration we have all in the West. On the East, we didn't have real detachment of our armed forces. And Russian Federation, unfortunately, beginning from the first Maidan, already started to main strategy toward Ukraine. What does mean Ukraine for current leadership in the Russian Federation? 150,000 million people live on one of the 6 territories of the world. In Far East, this is 1-2 person per square kilometers. In Ukraine, we have almost 50 million Slavic people, majority. In the Russian Federation, there would be soon the severe problem in the army, even they have the majority of the Slavic population. for Russian Federation right now and the system of governance of Russia. Any robust European model of democracy, this is the main threat for integrity of the country. All the other, unfortunately, it was very skillful, very good orchestrated use of 4 elements of state power. The first, economy. The second, diplomacy. The third, we saw the military, but the most important, information war, which was started against Ukraine, just to prove this is fake state. The state cannot just exist. The government very weak. It's really weak, but the propaganda which was used was made in full response of art of war, and very skillful was provided. I'm not speaking about the 5th column, which were established for the last years of regime Yanukovych and all powerful ministers of Ukraine. Russian citizens basically were the 2 last Minister of Defense. Chairman of Security Service immediately escaped with all information abroad. Basically, we had 2 chairmen of Security Service, which second day, when they were released, they escaped from the country with all information which they had. The Chief of Foreign Intelligence, Minister of Interior Affairs, General Prosecutor, and so on and so on. What we right now have, if you just look, Независимая газета, Independence newspaper, Russian newspaper, just open the Google 24 May last year, round table, chaired by the full General Baluyevsky, the former Chief of General Staff of Russian Federation. And on this round table, there are a lot of very interesting participants. Igor Strelkov, how he named him. One lady, basically this lady, officially a reporter of Anna agency, which came only before this round table from Syria. Right now, she's in the custody in Kiev. This lady was arrested with the 3 trucks full of armaments on the border of Ukraine. And a lot of other very interesting experts, officers, high-ranking. But what the subject of this round table was? War in Syria and the lessons for Russia. How to use the war or controlled house to get national interest in the country which is object of interest for us, with all elements: infiltration of terrorists, infiltration to the opposition, and making the clash between the government and opposition with the blood. After this, prepare opinion and to make the platform for invention with peacekeeping operation. And main slogan, oh, Americans do this in Syria. Why we are not use the same methods in our national interests? And by the way, this is official strategic of the government of Russia, that Ukraine cannot be in any rate member of NATO and cannot be the member of European Union. This is national interest of Russian Federation openly proclaimed. That is, we right now have in my country, first of all, really, the government system was completely destroyed as independent system during the last 4 years. I might tell you that it started, unfortunately, even from the 2005. You know that when we used to have the first Maidan 2004, usually the protests is in the situation of weak economy, disaster in economy. You know that President Kuchma finished his term of duty with the national economic growth 12.5 per year, the highest in Europe. Basically, for the last 3 years of his presidency, he made several initiatives in the taxation system to help of creation the middle class in the country, for small and middle business. We have the highest percentage of economic growth. This is middle class, which basically protested against President Kuchma. But after this, unfortunately, it was disaster of ruling of President Yushchenko. Unfortunately, in the eastern our regions, many, even right now, think, oh, this was democracy. This is American-type democracy of Yushchenko. Yushchenko was the most lazy, incompetent, the president which we had. He started this practice of political appointees and the all-powerful ministries. What does it mean? Can you imagine that someone, political loyalist from the street, receiving the position of full general with all responsibility? In the West, there is this kind of practice, but it balanced by the law, by the tradition, because if party have 50% of support, but this is not the nation, and party representative in power minister with the special possibilities to influence for the life of country without outside control of the opposition, of the parliament, of the jurisdictional system, it's very dangerous. Because any political party might do anything to be forever in the power. In the West it's balanced. And the responsibility of these political appointees is not the 100% for the full general. One example, once again, the chief of Joint Staff in the United States, this is #1 military. And Ministry of Defense of United States, he cannot give the order even to the soldier near his office to move 2 steps. He didn't give the epaulets, he didn't give the position of commander of regiments. This is chief of Joint Staff does this. But if he will go to the, let's say, Democratic Party, Assembly or Republican Party and officially would support, he will finish his career. In my country, unfortunately, this precedent brought to the power for the all law enforcement, intelligence, armed forces, political loyalists, but with full responsibility of full generals. And they immediately started to make his vertical of loyalists. And after Yushchenko, Yanukovych used this precedent in his benefit brilliantly. He did put on key positions people which more have ability to work as organized crime group in the government than the real patriot of Ukraine. That is why our temporary weakness and our government system, plus very skillful work of our strategic opponent right now, because, you know, even officially right now, by our documents still adopted by the parliament, we have strategic partnership with the Russian Federation. Even right now, our engineers working on 50 silos with the most heavy ICBMs of Russians and basically maintained their ability as the chief designer of this missile. This is Yuzhmash in Dnipropetrovsk. We weren't prepared to fight with this enemy. We weren't prepared that when in Kiev students, people just gave their blood to stop dictatorship. And the most weakened situation with us, we received the knife from the country in which we believe this is our strategic partner. 2003, I was Deputy National Security Advisor. This was time when we suggested to Parliament adopt the first law on our national security and defense priority. And there was. In the long term, we want to be the member of Euro-Atlantic military organization. But the second part of this sentence even was written with the preserving strategic partnership with the Russian Federation. Basically, it was blocking sentence. Once again, I'm finishing. This is very skillful words which are used through the new model of destroying inside the country stability, with preparation, public opinion inside country aggressor and outside the world in his favor, and just to conduct their national, how they see the interest, with the new type of war of controlled house, which is controlled outside. We are teaching, we are making mistake, but we are teaching. And once again, unfortunately, the President Putin, even right now, I think, doesn't understand properly that Ukrainians, this is ancient Cossacks, this is free men, free warriors, free farmers. And for us, we even have this saying, 2 Ukrainians, 3 hetmans. It's impossible in this country to build the system of government with the Tsar, you might name this, and to establish authority, especially when the people feel that this is basically criminals, but not real authority. That is, we have very good news. We have a legitimate president of Ukraine. By the way, the first legitimate president of Ukraine, which has brilliant education, very good background, fluently speak foreign languages, and I think right now we have really good sign in tunnel. We want, as soon as possible, peace in our land. All the other, this is reform. Reform of disintegration of the power, giving the most responsibility for the regions. And in our first chapter, in our constitution, by the way, I think one of the best constitutions in Europe, is that we are democracy. But the problem is that unfortunately, last 2 presidents, they didn't do anything in the law, which is supposed to be under the constitution, to implement independence, 3 branch of power, to give the more responsibility for the regions, to control finance, to control governance in these regions, and in some way control the central government. Right now, we have very good opportunities, very fast to move ahead. And once again, we really appreciate support of the country, from which basically to us came the basic Christianity, which gave to us our grammar, with which we had all the time very, very big historical ties. It's very, once again, bad that there isn't in German, French, English difference of words. Русский and российский. This is different words. Русский and российский. And for Ukrainians, until 17th century, in all the maps, just to look, even to look for all documents of Rzecz Pospolita when we were part. There was Hetman Polski, Hetman Litovski, and Voyevoda Ruski. In 17th century, on all maps arrived the name of Ukraine. By the way, earlier than with Peter the Great arrived the name of Россия, Россияне. Unfortunately, a lot of myths will be ahead, but we on our own land. This is Asian, Ruska, Zemlya. We will fight for our independence, and unfortunately, our Russian, I don't want to say that once again, the strategic opponents, but unfortunately, they don't understand also a very simple thing. We are not Eurasia, European state. Our home Europe This is a huge problem for Russian Federation. Yes, they are the Euro-Asian state. They're supposed to think about this big territory, but maybe this is the most strategic mistake of current government in Russia. They don't want a very good to look in the history. Peter Great made window to Europe to modernize the country, to become powerful country. He didn't make the window to the east. In one of my first interview, I think Le Figaro, I said that basically the President Putin did open the case of Pandora. Who will prohibit China in 10-15 years just to claim we have the rights to protect the Chinese-speaking population in Far East when 1-2 people on square kilometers and almost 2 billion of Chinese on the border. And this very dangerous thing, I'm not speaking about the protocol of Budapest. We had the third nuclear arsenal of the world. We voluntarily gave these armaments. Russian Federation and United States in those days did everything just to disarm us. And we received this protocol. Unfortunately, we are with the protocol, but for the future, thank you for lessons. With these lessons understood, we very powerful country. The main enemy for the West and East and 2 Maidans were against this. These enemies, corruption and the government, destroying of law enforcement and jurisdictional system, and attempt to build autocratic regime. This is enemy with which we will fight, and we want to be with you. We want to be a society of European nations and to build the real democracy in which territory very important, but the most important to protect the personal rights, liberty and dignity of the citizen of this country. Thank you.